Cinderella, the familiar Disney version of Cinderella, presents a gentle and romantic story, but the original tale is far more unsettling in tone and detail. In the earlier version, the prince does not simply fall in love and search for her out of pure devotion. Instead, he deliberately spreads pitch on the palace stairs to trap the mysterious girl and ensure she cannot escape without leaving her slipper behind. This action gives his pursuit a more calculated and almost manipulative undertone. The story still follows the idea of identifying Cinderella through the slipper, but the method is far less charming. It reveals a darker and more controlling aspect of the prince's behavior that is absent from the Disney adaptation. The fate of the stepsisters is even more disturbing in the original version. In their desperation to marry the prince, they mutilate their own feet by cutting off parts of their toes and heels just to fit into the slipper. Blood fills the shoe, exposing their deception and adding a gruesome detail to the story. Their punishment continues during Cinderella's wedding when they attempt to gain favor by participating in the ceremony. Birds, who serve as agents of justice, attack them and peck out their eyes as punishment for their cruelty. This violent ending emphasizes harsh consequences for envy and deceit rather than offering redemption or forgiveness. Hansel and Gretel. While many people already consider the Brothers Grimm version of Hansel and Gretel to be dark, some earlier versions are even more disturbing. In a Romanian tale, two children are abandoned in the forest but manage to find their way home using a trail. Instead of relief, their return leads to something far more horrifying. Their stepmother kills the young boy and forces his sister to cook his body into a meal for the family. The act introduces a shocking element of betrayal and cannibalism into the story. It transforms what might have been a survival tale into something deeply tragic and unsettling. The father unknowingly eats his own son, completely unaware of what has been done. Meanwhile, the sister secretly saves her brother's heart and bones, preserving them in a tree. Over time, the boy is transformed into a bird, symbolizing both loss and transformation. The stepmother attempts to kill the bird as well, continuing her cruelty. However, in a twist of fate, she ends up dying during her attempt. Although justice is served in the end, the emotional weight of the story remains heavy and disturbing. Rapunzel. The original version of Rapunzel includes themes that are much more mature than those shown in modern adaptations. The story begins with Rapunzel being given to a witch after her father steals from the witch's garden to satisfy his wife's pregnancy cravings. This exchange already introduces a darker moral dilemma involving desperation and consequence. As Rapunzel grows up in isolation, a prince eventually discovers her tower. Their meetings are secret and occur regularly, leading to a romantic relationship that becomes physical. Rapunzel eventually becomes pregnant, although she does not fully understand what is happening to her. When the witch discovers the truth, she reacts harshly and banishes Rapunzel to a desolate desert. There, Rapunzel is left alone to give birth and survive under harsh conditions. The prince later returns to the tower but is tricked by the witch into believing Rapunzel is gone forever. In despair, he leaps from the tower and is blinded by thorns upon landing. After wandering blindly for a long time, he eventually reunites with Rapunzel. Her tears restore his sight, providing a bittersweet resolution after significant suffering and hardship. The Fox and the Hound. The Disney adaptation of The Fox and the Hound is already emotional, but the original novel presents an even darker and more tragic storyline. The story follows a fox and a hunting dog who form a bond during their youth. However, their friendship is destroyed due to the influence of humans who train and control them. The dog is raised to hunt, while the fox becomes the target of that training. This forced opposition turns their natural bond into a conflict driven by external pressures. It highlights how human interference can distort relationships in harmful ways. The situation escalates when the fox ends up killing the dog's owner during a confrontation. In response, the new owner orders the dog to relentlessly chase the fox. The pursuit is long and exhausting, ultimately leading to the fox collapsing and dying from exhaustion. Despite the dog's loyalty, he is no longer needed once the chase is over. The owner then kills the dog as well, ending his life without mercy. This conclusion reinforces the harsh reality of exploitation and the lack of compassion in the original narrative. Snow White. The original version of Snow White is significantly darker than the Disney adaptation, particularly in its repeated attempts on her life. The queen does not rely on a single poisoned apple, but instead makes multiple efforts to kill Snow White. These attempts include disguises and various deceptive methods that increase the tension of the story. The repeated attacks emphasize the queen's relentless jealousy and obsession. It creates a more intense and threatening atmosphere throughout the narrative. This version portrays a much more dangerous and persistent antagonist. The ending is especially brutal compared to the Disney version. During Snow White's wedding celebration, the evil queen is invited and recognized. As punishment for her actions, she is forced to wear iron shoes that have been heated until they are red hot. She is then made to dance continuously in these burning shoes. The torture continues until she collapses and dies from the pain. This extreme form of punishment reflects a harsh sense of justice. It transforms the story's conclusion into a grim warning rather than a joyful celebration. The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid tells a far more tragic story than the version most people know today. The mermaid agrees to trade her voice to a sea witch in exchange for human legs. As part of the deal, she loses her ability to speak and express herself. Every step she takes on land causes her intense and constant pain. Despite this suffering, she remains determined to win the prince's love. Her sacrifice is both physical and emotional, making her journey much more difficult. However, her efforts do not lead to a happy ending. The prince ultimately falls in love with another woman, believing she was the one who saved him. He marries that woman, leaving the mermaid heartbroken and alone. She is given a final chance to save herself by harming the prince, but she refuses to do so. Instead, she accepts her fate and prepares for death. In the end, she dissolves into sea foam. Little Red Riding Hood. The original version of Little Red Riding Hood is much darker and more cautionary than the modern retelling. The story follows the same basic setup, with the young girl encountering a wolf on her way to visit her grandmother. The wolf deceives her and reaches the grandmother's house first, disguising himself to trick the girl. When she arrives, the familiar exchange about eyes, ears, and teeth takes place. However, the tone of the story is far more ominous and suspenseful. It builds toward a grim outcome rather than a heroic rescue. Unlike later versions, there is no woodsman or savior who arrives to intervene. The wolf simply reveals his true intentions and attacks the girl. He devours her completely, bringing the story to an abrupt and tragic end. There is no reversal of fate or second chance for the protagonist. The tale serves as a direct warning about trusting strangers and ignoring danger. Its conclusion reinforces the harsh consequences of naivety and disobedience. Sleeping Beauty. The original tale behind Sleeping Beauty is significantly more disturbing than the romantic version known today. In the story, the princess falls into a deep sleep, similar to the familiar version. However, instead of being awakened by a kiss, a king discovers her while she is unconscious. Rather than helping her, he takes advantage of her condition. This results in her becoming pregnant without her awareness. The narrative introduces serious and troubling themes that are absent in modern adaptations. The princess eventually awakens, not from a kiss, but after giving birth to twins. She has no memory of what happened and must come to terms with her situation. The king later returns, despite already having a wife, and becomes involved with her again. Complications arise involving the king's existing family, adding further tension to the story. Eventually, he marries the princess, resolving the situation in an unsettling way. The story lacks a clear moral and instead presents a deeply problematic sequence of events. Peter Pan. While Peter Pan is often seen as a symbol of eternal childhood and adventure, the original portrayal is far more unsettling. Peter leads a group of boys who live on an island where they are not allowed to grow up. At first, this seems like a carefree and magical existence. However, there is a darker rule underlying this world. Any boy who begins to mature or grow older is no longer allowed to remain. This creates a hidden sense of danger beneath the fantasy setting. Peter enforces this rule by removing those who do not comply. The implication is that he kills or eliminates boys who begin to age. This ensures that the group remains permanently young, but at a terrible cost. The number of boys constantly changes because of this practice. It reveals Peter as a controlling and even ruthless figure rather than a purely playful one. The story suggests that eternal youth in this world comes with deadly consequences. Pinocchio. The original Pinocchio story presents a much harsher moral lesson than the version most audiences recognize. Pinocchio begins as a mischievous and disobedient puppet who frequently ignores advice. His actions lead him into a series of dangerous and unfortunate situations. Unlike the Disney version, his mistakes are not easily forgiven or corrected. The tone of the story is more severe, emphasizing punishment over redemption. It portrays consequences in a far more direct and unforgiving manner. As the story progresses, Pinocchio's behavior continues to worsen. Eventually, his actions lead to his capture and execution. He is hanged as a result of his repeated disobedience and poor choices. This ending serves as a stark warning to children about the dangers of misbehavior. There is no magical transformation or happy resolution to soften the outcome. The story concludes with a grim reminder of accountability and consequence. If you thought these fairy tales were dark, Wait until you see what's coming next. We're diving into horrifying books that were never meant to be read, and the stories behind them are even more disturbing. From cursed texts to deeply unsettling pages, this next video will leave you questioning everything.